I received a call in relation to registered letters and people going off in different directions. I'm going to try and unpack this for people.
Okay, yeah. Well, we're just very concerned. The parents across the groups are essentially looking for answers. They're afraid and they're looking for answers. And they're going down all sorts of different routes here, contacting solicitors, sending letters in with children to schools. So we've got a lot of panic out there, a lot of fear. So we're just trying to get a set way for parents to go ahead, try and find a way around this, a bit of comfort for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So I totally get it. It's easier to go into fear mode than authority mode, okay? But a couple of key things for people to realise, and I'm just giving you a snapshot here, folks, and I'm not bashing anybody, but you have a duty of care to your kids and to yourself. And I'm hitting you with quick stuff here to get you to put the brakes on what you're doing and think about what you're doing. So really quickly, the family is protected in the Irish Constitution as being the highest authority, higher and more ancient than any human statute. So this is part of the reason that the registered letter methodology is so important. It puts the matter on the record, on the legal record. You do not need a solicitor to do this, folks. And by the way, they won't tell you this. They take an oath to uphold the British legal system and represent the courts first, okay? I'm not saying there's not good solicitors out there or good barristers out here, but you need to know the rules of engagement. There's no provision in the Irish Constitution for the bar courts. That's another thing people need to be mindful of. Let's just unpack that for a second and pause it. The reason you should not, under any circumstances, give a child, a minor, a letter to hand over is, first of all, you're failing in your capacity as parent to show a better standard to your children than the schools you're giving out about. You're going to give out about the students having your child in harm's way. And yeah, here you are as the parent giving out documentation to give back to the schools. You're not stepping up to the plate as a parent. You keep your child out of this. Your child is sacrosanct. This is why the registered letter methodology is so important, because you are reasserting your authority as head of the family. So I don't care where you're living, you're the head of the family. There's some queries in relation to why handwritten blue ink letters are so important, folks. And the solicitors ain't going to tell you this. Some of this stuff goes back to common law writs. Any solicitor that's telling you to type up something is not worth their salt. You ask yourselves, use your God-given common sense. Is it better to handwrite something, okay, where you can pick up the nuances, the emotion behind it, the intention behind it, or just give a cookie cutter typed up letter with a signature to the bottom of? There have been times in courts when there have been challenges about whether something's been a duplicate or a copy. And the reason the carbon copy is so important is it's a duplicate done at the exact same time. It is not a copy, it's a duplicate of the original. This is so important. And anybody who's telling you to get a copy doesn't know what they're talking about. I'm telling you that now, folks, because they'll say, that's a copy. And you go, no, it's a duplicate. This is a precise facsimile of what was given into that person. But however, given into that person is the facsimile of the original, of which I have here in my hand and of which I have here registered. And if the passion's coming through, folks, it's because I'm concerned that people are about to act and they're not listening to their own common sense. So I'll just throw it back to you for another comment there if I can.
They're sending off the registered letters, Darren. A lot of parents are coming back there with, they're afraid of the response they're going to get. What do they follow up with the response? We also have another issue, sorry, I'm going to sideline here, with single parents are concerned about their validity as the head of the family, if they're taking it on when they're not actually the guardian of the child, if they're trying to tackle the schools themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is why we gave other templates up on the Awan site to respond to this. This is the key thing. So we have variations up there to help people. This is global implications. We just use the Irish Constitution, which restrains the state. It doesn't restrain the family in any way, folks. It just gives you some fundamental rights written on a piece of paper and just reconfirms them from the record. It doesn't give or take any of your rights away. Your rights, folks, whether you want to know it or not, comes from God and the Creator, not the state. Not the state, folks, okay? And if you're so scared that you can't write a registered letter now, okay, how bad do you think it's going to get down the road, folks? Seriously, you need to do this. We've done this. You've got to step up to the plate in this one, folks. Don't let somebody else who's a paid interest in directing you in a certain route to fight hard for you in court to tell you what to do. You take your own action as well. This is so important that people realize this. In relation to what happens after you get a response back from a registered letter, believe me, that registered letter is going to cause a lot of headaches and fudge you off insufficient, poor quality answer. What you do is you ask the question again. You don't deviate from that question. You say, perhaps you have difficulty reading, okay? If they get really silly with, but this is a critical question to my child's health. I require it answered. And you CC your original question and their response back, and you escalate it. This is how you do it, folks. You're just asking questions. You're not out to cause trouble. It's a duty of care issue. This is so important that people realize this. You don't need to get out and protest. You don't need to join that. And you just need to ask questions and you'll get the answers that you require. They can't answer. Believe me, no such rubric exists. And that's why you're asking for mass. That's why you're asking about all this stuff, because it doesn't exist. Essentially, you're throwing things into the machine that grind it to a halt. It buys you time. We're going to do follow-ups and masterclasses with all these registered letters. This is just the first step in the process. You need to follow through. And sorry if the passion is coming through, but I'm concerned that if you put your child in harm's way by handing over a letter that could technically, now think about this, if you're worried about the system, think about this, you're handing over a letter to a child, a minor, that could technically compromise your child, and then you might even be opening your child up to interventions, right? Because you clearly didn't care about your child's well-being. You clearly didn't care so much about your child's health and concern that you took action yourself. You pass it off to a child to hand to a member of the state. What's that saying about how you actually view your own family and your duty of care? This is so important. And again, I'm just trying to drive it home. If it's coming across a little bit forcefully, it's just to get you to reconsider your position. You're the head of the family. Flesh and blood is a stronger bond than anything else out there.
So just essentially on the letters on the L1 website, we could switch, we've got masks on there, so we could switch that essentially for PCR tests and for the vax as well. We can ask the same questions in the same form in the registered letter if anything like that should come up.
Absolutely. We're working on this. The idea, the first thing we were asked to do was masks because that's a clear and present issue.
Okay.
With very small modifications, you change it toward PCR testing, any kind of alleged vaccination. You'd ask in that instance, you'd ask about latitude and longitudinal studies, which means span of population and duration of testing. Okay? So we know this stuff, folks. There's work in the pipeline here. Please, please, please act now, act in a certain manner and use your God-given common sense. If you're not the boss of you, you've made somebody else the boss of you. Please, don't get me wrong. Any action is better than some action. The people who send a registered letter are in a much stronger position. They're much better protected in law than somebody goes in with this pleading letter to a school to say, oh, please don't do this. I don't want this. You need to give them an instruction. You need to get the instruction to stick to them. You need to put the matter on the record. This is why all important legal documentation is put on the record. It's so important, folks, and that's why you need to do it this way.
On a CC of the letter, who would be the best? I mean, you could send it to your local CDs, I'm sure, the same letter, the duplicate copy. You could send it off to them and make sure that the school knows that they have those letters as well.
You could, right, if you really wanted to, but I just do CC. I just do BCC, and the school doesn't know where it's gone.
Okay.
So you might do it to your representatives and your alleged representatives included to raise awareness. I don't know if I'd be including the doctor at that moment in time because they might come through that you're giving them power of attorney. So this is what you do. So I do CC and I do public representatives perhaps. So they are on the record about this as well. But BCC gives you the right to reserve to send that to anybody at a later date should you desire. Blind cover copy.
Okay, thanks very much.
This is so important. Just so everybody's aware of this. See if you get a solicitor talking for you now. Right, and this is so important people realize this. If a solicitor is speaking for you now and you hand them over the brief of the case and you want to step up in court one day and speak, you could be in contempt of court, folks, because you don't speak legal language. And when you go in there and you speak, you could actually be in contempt of court because you've hired a legal brief to represent you, represent you. And if you don't
Okay.
go in there and you're essentially acquiescing to the rules of their game, it's up to the people to exercise their sovereign authority. You don't depend on somebody else to give you the authority, folks. You act, you act. Once it's lawful,
Okay.
that's so important. Because if you give it over
Right.
this information over to the legal brief, you're going to have to sack them in open court if they're not doing as you tell them. Whereas it's
Okay.
a bit like the Matrix, folks. The whole point is you're not playing their game. You don't play their game. Okay, you get them
Yes.
to have to
Yes. Yes.
dodge what you're doing, and that's such an important point. Please, please, please pause for thought. Think about what you're doing, and just really ask yourselves if you're that concerned. Surely you should be doing more than just having a letter being handed over to a child. How do you even know that teacher got the letter? They could say, I never got it. The headmaster could say
Uh-huh.
they never got it. Everybody can say they never
Yeah.
got it. Right? You gave it to a child, and then what? It's adults' version? Adults' testimony against the child? Really? Do you think that's going to wash? Please, registered letters, so important.